officially step back from speaking duties today because I'm on celebratory duties. My guy has won. I don't know if it's going to be the last time ever or whatever it is. I don't even want to give up that thought in my head. I don't even want to think about it. But yes, I need to sit back and relax and sit like a king today, guys. This needs to be my moment. No?
Enjoyed,
That's always the
I
absolutely.
case.
need to.
That's always the case with a Carlos Sainz win, right? It's always a little bit more special than other wins because it doesn't happen all that often as well. But whenever it does, it's a very special occasion. There's always a nice backstory to it. There's always a resurgence. There's always a redemption attached to it. So, yeah, you should definitely celebrate it. But I'm celebrating with you today.
Hey, the Ferrari t-shirts are out now. Ing, that's more like it. See, I
Had
think
to bring it
Sebastian
out
Vettel was right.
sometime.
Finally, it feels like that time of the year again where you can bring out your Ferrari t-shirts. Two race wins in a row, one for Leclerc, one for Sainz. The band is coming back in together, and there's just something about a Carlos Sainz race win, Kunal, as Sundaram said. And the one thing that really stands out to me is hunger. We see athletes so many times step out on a football pitch or a cricket pitch or a Formula One track, and we sometimes say that they lack the hunger. And we wonder what would a driver or what would an athlete look like with hunger on their side. If there ever was a clear example of that, I think it was Carlos Sainz this weekend. Just the determination to go win. Like that move on Max Verstappen, firstly, from so far back, it wasn't really on per se, but then that was the move of a driver who had nothing to lose. And the best part, Kunal, at the end of the race, he said, I will take opportunities like this. And if more of them keep coming my way, I will go get them. It's incredible.
You know what's incredible for me, Samuel, beautifully explained. The incredible part is what Carlos Sainz is going through is unprecedented. Okay. He has been let off by Ferrari for Lewis Hamilton, not for lack of performances, but just because of a brand of Lewis Hamilton joining Ferrari. And if we were to take an immediate example or a recent example, it was Valtteri Bottas making way for George Russell. But the belief at that time was Bottas was done with his
Yeah.
Mercedes stint. He was, he had plateaued and he had gone over. The belief with Carlos Sainz is the opposite, that, oh my God, he's still peaking, he's still peaking, he's still peaking. And oops, he had to let go. And I love how he's embracing it. He's embracing it as a way of life, saying, I'm just going to make the most of everything I can. He's not gone on a negative spiral because he's going to Williams. You don't know what's going to happen at Williams. Will they be quick? Will they not be quick? But he's definitely not going to be in podium or race winning potential or whatever you call it. And while he's embracing the reality, he's also being philosophical. He's able to narrate and express himself very well, saying, I may never get this chance again, so let me make the most of it. And then, how we express displeasure that I've been on this journey to make Ferrari what it is today, but I may not be there to extract the benefits when they
Oh,
actually come with title challenges in 2025. But the truth about this win, okay, and you guys can correct me, is this was probably the most boring of Carlos Sainz's race wins. His race wins are
no.
usually not boring. No, I'm talking only from his race point of view. The race was extremely exciting, but when you think of his drive, when you think of what he did up front, he was unmatched. And it was a boring race for him, so to say, apart from that one magnificent move on Max Verstappen.
No,
No?
Kunal, no, you're not a science fan. I can tell because as a science fan, those 2 hours were. I mean, even if I ignore everything else, even if I just look at the timing screen, I was thoroughly entertained because every single time Leclerc and Norris pile up the pressure, that 6 second gap becomes a 5 second gap. Within a couple of laps, it's back to 6.6 or 7 or 7.5 or 8. For me, I was honestly so entertained looking at this guy flex his muscles throughout the race. When Leclerc came calling and when Sainz actively expressed his displeasure on the radio, after that, he didn't just make some angry noises and kept on doing what he was doing. He went on and became faster. And that for me was just so entertaining throughout.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Don't get me wrong. It was a very entertaining race, beautiful execution by Carlos up front, controlling the narrative, all of that. But what I mean is, if you think back at his other race wins that have come,
Hmm.
okay, there's always been a lot of drama for him to win. Okay, guys
Yeah,
stop
yeah.
inventing, etc. Ferrari trying different things. This was clinical execution. And mind you, when Formula One teams and drivers execute clinical races, they often make it boring for the fans. If you take only Carlos Sainz into perspective, okay, so I'm very glad that he's also delivered a race where he's like, isn't there nobody to challenge me? Because literally there weren't a lot of people challenging him throughout the business end of the weekend. On Saturday, that pole position, two
Oof.
tenths is a massive gap for a Carlos Sainz pole position. It's actually the largest gap that he's ever had to pole. And I can read that out. 0.225 in Mexico. His previous pole, Singapore 23, 700ths of a second. Italy, Monza 2023, 1300ths of a second.
It's
Okay.
crazy.
So if you go back to his previous five pole positions, this is the largest gap he even had to pole. So it was one of those race weekends, Somil and Sundaram, since you both are celebrating, and I celebrate every driver's race weekend just so I can express that I really love the sport, neutral of all the drivers. Much as I know you guys also do, it's just that you all have Ferrari merchandise to flex it this time. But I absolutely loved the way he controlled the race, and guys, it's another interesting thought. You go to a high speed circuit, Ferrari is going to do okay, but Red Bull's going to do well. You go to a low to medium speed, lots of flowing corners, McLaren's going to do well. Lots of car characteristics that come, like someone
Hmm.
loves to say, if it's cooler, Mercedes becomes quicker. This was one of those races. If you look at the Ferrari drivers, I think low grip surfaces and low grip circuits do not work for Charles Leclerc. He actually has been honest enough to accept it as well, and that was the difference. I mean, Charles Leclerc had no answer to Carlos Sainz pretty much the whole race weekend.
Sundaram, I have one question for you on this, and I might be slightly biased, but I think this is the best Carlos Sainz win, given the performance, given the circumstance, given the quality of the competition, and given the quality of the cars around, and the occasion. A boy from Madrid winning in Mexico City with over 400,000 people watching him do so. Yeah, I think it doesn't get better than this, does it?
I think each of Sainz's wins are just as special. Like I said, even if you start from his race in Great Britain, the first ever race, he's always been at his tactical best. And then I think Singapore and Australia I would probably rate slightly higher. Also understanding the backdrop, Australia this year also because he had just come out of an appendix surgery and probably wasn't 100%. But like Kunal said, putting pole position and taking a margin of 2 tenths around what is the third shortest track of the season is a big thing. So he was literally on it in these last two race weekends. He was there in qualifying. And this is one now in four different in Europe, in Asia, and in South America. So what's missing is a race win in South America. So maybe that's happening next weekend as well.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yes. That is a very good point. We are going to Brazil next time out. And, well, we'll talk about what Brazil will be like and who it could favor in the preview. But we should very quickly turn things back around and talk more about the season. But before we do that, guys, before we get to all of that, one very, 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 very important reminder for all of you: this is not just our debate, it's your debate as well. You can join us and you can share your opinions and your questions for us by checking out our social media pages. It's at Inside F1 Pod. And we would love to hear from you. Send in your questions, send in your opinions, whatever you have in mind. It could just be a random thought as well. We would love to get it on the show as well, and also to be able to answer those questions on our Instagram stories, because there are quite a few of them that have come up from this race weekend that are not really particular to the race but around broader stuff which we might not have time for in this episode. But For more extra coverage of the Inside Line F1 podcast, we have our social media platforms for that. So we will very gladly answer those questions for you over there. But coming back to the point, Kunal, six race winners, actually six two-time or double race winners in 2024. I, for me, having more competition between multiple teams across multiple circuits, across multiple car and driver characteristics is what makes for a good season. And in my eyes, 2024 is turning out to be better than 2021 because less controversy, less 1v1 rubbish, if you know what I mean. And I'm not saying 1v1 is rubbish, just that it got a bit too personal by the end. But now we're seeing so many different winners, and at any given point, anyone can and should win as well.
Frankly, even better proponent for 2024 for me is 24 races. The first 8 races, Red Bull Racing was the quickest. The next 8 races, McLaren has been the quickest. But now the last 8 races, if you were to break it in every third of a season, or the season into equal thirds, I believe Ferrari is showing that they are the quickest. Okay, and to me, that's a beautiful sign of what Formula One can be in its heydays. Usually we are always shown or forced to see single or double team dominance that goes finishing 20 seconds ahead of the rest, pitting when they want to. But this is the Formula One that we all love. And I love the fact that we are literally going to go to Brazil and I have no idea again on who is going to win, who is going to take pole. We have the usual suspects. Yes, Norris could claim pole because he's in the best car, or Verstappen always pulls out a magic lap, but Leclerc is a single lap specialist. And of course, you can't ever leave out Lewis Hamilton in Brazil, a country that's adopted him officially. But that we'll leave for Brazil. But that's what stands out for me the most about 2024. It's almost like I don't want the season to end, or rather, I
Same.
don't. I don't want the new rules and regulations to come. I don't want the winter break. I'm like, if this is what Formula One's like, let's just bring forward the calendar, keep racing, because this is absolute chaos. And I know we've got the constructors standing, Ferrari's jumped, Red Bull, etc. But when we have the kind of races that we had yesterday, I don't even care about these standings. In one part of me is like, who cares where each team is and where each driver is? The fact that they're all trying to maximize that moment, that lap, that pit stop is so critical because they normally don't fall under so much pressure that literally every driver going into Mexico said, I just need to maximize what I have this weekend. I need to maximize this lap. I need to maximize Q3. I need to maximize my first stint because there is no formula for winning. The only formula is you get the best out of what you have in that moment, and then you hope that that's better than everyone else.
Hey, I'll tell you one reason to be excited by the standings. Sundaram, I'll have to get you to do some digging because we've all always asked for one thing from Formula One. We always say, let's go back to the glory days. Let's have McLaren versus Ferrari in the Constructors Championship. Where is that time? Where has the great have the great memories gone? Well, the memories are back. It's McLaren versus Ferrari at the top of the Constructors standings, I believe for the first time since 2010 or something. Nine, not even nine, 8 or 10, maybe something like that. No.
Yeah, it really has been a while. I mean, McLaren were leading the championship at the start of 2014 as well, at the very first race of the
Oh
hybrid
yeah,
era.
but Ferrari weren't there
But
clearly.
I don't think so. But that's what McLaren and Ferrari are the OG teams of Formula One, and that's when I say that seeing them back at the very front and that too consistently, it feels like it's a return of the old guard. And we've grown up watching these teams compete and these teams dominate. So them being at the forefront of it right now is amazing. And I think this season there's been a little bit for every single fan base. A little bit for the Ferrari and McLarens, a little bit for the Red Bulls, a little bit for the Mercedes, and also a little bit or quite a bit for the smaller Haas fan base as well. So in that sense, having 3 to 4 different teams competing week in week out is amazing for the sport's health. And if you want me to summarize that in terms of a stat, Max Verstappen is the only driver to have taken back-to-back race wins this year. the last time a driver took back-to-back wins was in Spain, which was Max Verstappen. The last 10 races, we've not had a back-to-back race winner. It's always been a
That's
Lando or
crazy.
an Oscar or a Charles or a Carlos. That's crazy. And Max Verstappen has still not won in those 10 races. So Formula One is in great health right now, and I hope it continues through to next year as well.
Like, just look at the quality of drivers in that top nine in the Drivers' Championship. Verstappen, Norris, Leclerc, Piastri, Sainz, Hamilton, Russell, Perez, Alonso. And if you were to talk about best of the rest, Nico Hulkenberg in P10, which is also incredible. We should get to Haas in some time because there
Now
is a
the
lot of.
now that you mentioned Nico Hulkenberg, I can't stop myself with saying this, but Nico Hulkenberg is the first Haas driver to score 4 points in a row for them. They've and that includes
No.
sprints as well. That includes the sprint as well. I mean, Roman Grosjean has won and has scored points in 3 Grand Prix, but if you include the sprint, that's 4 races in a row. And Nico Hulkenberg is the first Haas driver to score points for them in 4 consecutive races. I
And they're
just had to
letting
put
him
that in.
go.
That's the sad part of it, right? Because
They're
I
not letting
feel
him go. You know,
Or rather, they couldn't match the offer. Let's put it
no,
that way.
the truth is, Sauber Audi made a move before Haas could, and before Haas could get onto the table, the discussion had gone so further with Sauber Audi that they had to let him go. And at this moment, I think Nico Alkenberg must just be feeling so silly that, my goodness, I'm having the time of my life, but I'm going to give up on this package. But I'll tell you, the one driver who must be feeling most excited is Esteban Ocon, because he's having a crazy timing in that Alpine, and every time Haas goes ahead and scores point, he must be relishing his prospects, saying, "Oh my goodness, this is what I'm going to get to race next year." Of course, hopefully, pecking order stays the same, changes. But Nico, fantastic guy, what a brilliant performer of the year already, I would say.
And Kevin Magnussen, P7 in that Haas, his best performance of the entire season. Sometimes you need a driver to get his elbows out, and he's done just that. But also a word on him, right? We've bashed him left, right, and center for his driving earlier this season. At least I have, and I've been very critical of the way he goes about his racing. But there's a flip side to it as well. For the aggression you bring in, there's also the control that you have with you after doing so many races. And that control can be so invaluable for a team like Haas that just needs to, drinking game, maximize whatever they have. And for Kevin Magnussen to get P7 towards the tail end of his Formula One career, his best finish in such a long time, and then to also remember that pole position he had a couple of years ago, I think he's just becoming better with time. Sauber, come on. If you're looking at Mick, if you're looking at Mick, I think you should look around what's in the paddock first. But okay, that's just my take. Should we get to Sauber later, or should we go to Norris and Leclerc first? Because I feel there are bigger stories over there, guys.
I
Lots
think
of
we
fun
can
stuff.
go to, yeah, nobody. I wish we cared more about Sauber much. Like they cared a little more about
Well,
themselves.
the discussion is pointless, quite like their season so far, unfortunately.
Yeah, and in the context of Kevin Magnussen, what I love is this Haas upgrade that they brought up in Austin has worked so well for him that he's actually outqualified Nico Hulkenberg 2 times in 2 races, which is also a very big achievement. And then he just fell out of the points in Austin because of a bad strategy. But so wonderful that the upgrade is working with both drivers, and Haas is literally, you cannot rule them out.
Yeah, absolutely no chance. But guys, okay, I feel before we go to talk about P2 and Lando Norris and Charles Leclerc, and of course, Max Verstappen too, I feel we need to give you guys a bit of an introduction on who we are and what this podcast is all about. Because trust me, we will forget to do this. And we don't want that to happen. We just don't want to listen to a couple of random noises or a couple of random voices actually without knowing who they are and what they're talking about. Because trust me, when we are going to be talking about that whole incident and the whole penalty for Max, you are sometimes going to wonder, I wish I'm. I mean, you're going to wonder, am I listening to guys who know their stuff? We do. Touchwood. We've been around racing for quite a while. All four of us, Kunal, Mithila, myself, Somil, and F1 Stats Guru. Who are we starting out with? It's Kunal first. I'll go for it. Former marketing head of the Force India Formula One team, who now are in the guise of Aston Martin, who now have Fernando Alonso in their team, who was driving his 400th race, and he stopped. Unfortunate. We'll get to that shortly. But he's also often seen on TV in Norway for the Viaplay Network's Formula One broadcast, which he also produces behind the scenes. So it's very cool. And he's also worked with many top motorsport brands as well, like Autosport, Motorsport, AutoX, and you name it. Next up is me. Who's going next, guys?
I'll go for you. And yes, I mean, Somil is one of the most, I mean, one of the youngest and sought after commentators in India and in this space around motorsport, digitally, I mean, virtually as well as on ground. And if you just take a look at all the brands that you can see there, there's MotoGP, there's Formula E, there's Sony ESPN, and he's been around. He's done a lot of this, and he's done this for a good 7 8 years. So there's a lot of experience that comes with that, and he's of course my co-host here, but also he's with me in the media comms room at the Indian Racing League and the Indian F4 Championship. So someone who really brings a lot to the table and also in front of the mic.
Tja, too kind. But we now need to talk. We need to talk about you, Sundaram, and I think Kunal needs to tell that story.
Yeah, so from the voice of motorsport in India, who is Somil, I now get to introduce the best stats handle on the internet. I'm pretty sure every single listener has come across Sundaram stats, either on official broadcasts of Formula One, Formula Two, or even the F1 Academy these days, or you've read about it in several media spaces where he has written Autosport, Motorsport, the race as well, or there's a good chance that people have just stolen his stat without giving him the credit as F1 stats guru, which is also something we've seen time and time again. But he's a member of the WTF1 talent group, and very proud that both Somil and Sundaram have been on this journey with me and Mithila on the Inside Line F1 podcast since just during or just a little before the pandemic. So we're going from strength to strength, and I couldn't have done it without you both. So thank you very much.
But there's one unfortunate thing. Sundaram, you're not going to be with us for the entire episode, I'm hearing.
Yeah, unfortunately, my office folks also need me to help solve a couple of solutions there as well. So I'll have to quickly jump over to work. But of course, you guys should definitely continue this discussion and let people know if that penalty was truly deserved and probably dissect that a little bit more. I'll have to jump off and I'll catch you folks soon.
Do you have a second, though? Just give us your opinion. Was it fair? Were both fair or not? They're actually calling you now. They're right on your back.
They don't want you to say or
Exactly.
share your opinion on the penalty.
No, I think it was a long time coming, and I don't want to discuss much about the penalty because I think it really was a long time coming, and I think Verstappen is also kind of pushing the limits of trying to see how long can he get away with it. But largely, I have a point of how Max likes to deal with his championship fights, and there's a very nice analogy from the Three Idiots movie that comes to mind.
Hmm.
If you want to top a subject, you either study really hard, or you detract your competitors, you distract them so that they get lower points than you, lower marks than you. And I feel after watching yesterday's race, I felt that's what Max has been doing rather than going and really trying to put his car on the podium. I think he's really after Lando Norris and trying to ensure that he stays either behind him or the both of them crash out of the race. And I got such similar feelings even during the 2021 season when I felt Hamilton has the chance to outscore him during a race and then they both crash out. And it's not a good feeling. It doesn't give it does it's not a nice way to add those sort of words around Max Verstappen's reputation. Sure, he's a very talented and skilled driver, but you don't want to have these sort of remarks against your driving style and your career. So that's what I just feel about it. Maybe it could have been better racing, but the penalty was long time coming. That's it.
Max and Chatur. Max and Chatur.
Max and
Interesting.
Chatur.
Okay, we'll let you go on that, Sundaram. Thank you. Thank you for
Thank you. Catch you
joining in.
guys.
But there's a good correlation, Kunal. If you guys have indeed watched Three Idiots, you're probably going to love this analogy as much as I am. I'm just relishing it. But
For the non-Indian audiences, we should just explain quickly what Three Idiots is. It's a blockbuster Bollywood movie. 15 years ago, three friends set out to do different things in the world, and it's a movie on friendship, but lots of interesting philosophy about pursuing what you want to do in life, preparing for it, intelligence versus preparation and several things. Because intelligence here, if we go back to that analogy, I think Max worked really hard in the first parts of the races, first parts of the season. If you remember when he was still winning everything and he was pushing Red Bull, where you take 22 or 23 into account, even for the fastest lap of the race, for a risky strategy or a pit stop. This is why they do that when you have the fastest car. When you've got the car, you
Yeah.
want to maximize every single point because you never know when that point is going to come handy, just in case the fastest car goes away to a rival of yours. And that's what's pretty much happened. And it shifted to Norris, and now it's shifted to Ferrari, like I was saying earlier in the season. And going back to this incident, of course, Max Verstappen. Firstly, I don't. I have a different view on. It's been a long time coming because it cannot be that you penalize Max in Mexico just because you didn't penalize him enough in Austin or in Brazil or in whichever
Yeah.
parts of the world before. So I am a little different. Like, you got to treat it for what it is today. And I think there is a bit of a hangover because Austin was just 4, 5 days, 7 days ago. Lots of controversy. They had discussions in the drivers' briefing, which went on really long. Apparently, Norris and Verstappen were directly speaking to each other over the incidents that happened. And frankly, I think Max, even post race, said if he hadn't driven the way he did, Lando would have won the race and Max would have lost a lot of points. So, of course, the right mentality, but I just wish it wasn't on display in this way. When I say right mentality, as in, yes, if I don't win, I don't want my rivals to win. Fair enough. That's the right mentality you need to have as a top athlete. But I don't know if this is the best way of executing it because I genuinely, like, while I treat this incident for what it was, I think Max Verstappen robbed us of a beautiful Sainz versus Lando Norris battle for the
Yes.
race win. And I say beautiful because at the start of the show, I said Sainz was unmatched, and the only driver who could have matched him was Lando Norris. And I think he just sort of took that away from us because by doing what he did, Norris just lost one more position to Charles Leclerc, and then Ferrari played the team game as they should and helped Carlos Sainz nail that win in.
But my whole question here is, why does he have to do this? I get the point about trying to make sure that your rivals don't get one up on you and trying to make sure that you're able to maximize the points gap between the two of you. But how? How dirty do you want to be? How aggressive do you want to get? And it's blatant. I don't want to use the word cheating, but it's blatant exploitation of the rules here because a 20-second penalty doesn't do enough ultimately. You get 10 seconds each for both the incidents, but at the end of the day, he knows he has a car good enough that it can drop back down and come up to P6 or P7. I'm not denying why they did that. It's fair. If I was Red Bull Racing and if I had that mentality of doing anything to win, which is what they glorify in Formula One, remember, this is why we love the sport. I would end up doing the same thing, taking on that 20-second penalty, going back, and then charging back up to score some points, which Max ultimately did. But my point is, you're Max Verstappen. You're the best driver on earth. Nobody can match you. I still believe nobody can match him. I still believe he's right on that level with Lewis Hamilton. Fastest driver in qualifying, fastest driver in the race. Sometimes it doesn't work out. But I feel you get the mark of a champion by seeing how they lose or by seeing how they accept losing. That's where this is a very bitter pill to me. Like driving your rival off the track deliberately. First incident, turn four, we'll get back to it in a second. But I want to talk about the other one, the one we have on our screen right now. Driving him off blatantly, sending it on the inside line when you're easily at around 200 kph or something, with the wall so close to you. What if Lando doesn't let go? What if he doesn't see the position? Both of you are in the wall at 200, 250. That's all your mechanics' hard work and effort done. And weren't you the people complaining in Silverstone 2021 saying that it was a bit too risky of a move by Lewis? I just don't get it. I don't get the duality of it. And speaking of duality, I am absolutely annoyed. Maybe it's a trivial issue to be annoyed by, but I'm starting to lose my uh, racing respect for Christian Horner, if you know what I mean. As a person, obviously, there's great admiration for everything he's achieved with Red Bull Racing, building such an empire, managing such successful drivers. But I don't get someone switching their morals on racing one weekend after the other, depending on what's convenient for their team. Christian Horner brought out the telemetry and data from Verstappen and Norris's turn 4 incident to show that Norris was going 15 kilometers per hour faster at the apex than he did on his fastest lap, which means he's not going to make the corner. Hence, Lando was ahead at the apex, hence, he had the right of passage at the corner, hence, he kept his position, and hence, Max got the penalty. And now Christian Horner is complaining that this is too dangerous. Buddy, you were the same person who accepted this last weekend and justified this as the reason for why Verstappen didn't get a penalty because he was ahead at the apex. So when your driver does it, it's smart. When the other one does it, it's getting too dangerous. Explain that to me, Kunal. I struggle to make sense of it.
Well, it's classic human psychology at play, at display, because it's a high stakes game, high speed, high stakes, high risk, high rewards. Everything is high. And Christian is doing what any human, and I believe every human is selfish, every selfish human does so.
But
And
hear me out on that. I'm sorry to cut in, but being selfish doesn't mean accepting things as they are, right? Like because there's a difference between the two. You can be selfish, but you can also accept reality for what it is, and maybe not turn morality into the way you want it to. I
but
feel there's a gap between the two of them.
but I think if you ask him in public versus what you ask him in private, you might get a different answer. Here they have to twist reality to showcase why their particular driver didn't do something, and I think that's what they're doing out here. And at the moment, I think Max Verstappen is that one driver who knows absolutely to what extent he can stretch the rule book when it comes to the driving guidelines, as we've got
Hmm.
in Formula One. And we've got to hand it over to him for knowing exactly what he can do at what times of wheel to wheel battle. He knows it, he's
Yeah.
extracting it. I'm not saying it's right or wrong. I'm just saying he's doing what he's doing. This is like a team finding a loophole in the sporting or the technical regulations and then building a double diffuser. It's not right or wrong. It's a loophole and you've exploited it. And that's what Max is doing. The FIA did say after Austin that they're going to change, going to have a relook at those driving guidelines, which I think is very good. But what Christian Horner's done here is basically what every team boss has done, taken the fight to the media, give some narratives to the media to let them write their stories. And I get a feeling that so there are two outcomes. If we take a step back and we see what could those outcomes be, either the driving guidelines will get increasingly more complex, which I really hope not,
Hmm.
or we take a step back and if I might just take that whole let them race approach where we might have more I don't know, relaxed rules of racing, because at the moment Max is doing whatever he wants to do. And finally, for once, he's gotten what, a 20-second time penalty. I mean, I joked in the middle of the race saying the Red Bull mechanics better remember that whichever driver's pitting, they've got a time penalty to serve because both the drivers had time penalties.
And different time penalties. But coming back to this, the whole driving guidelines, I I think if there's one common rule that needs to be kept everywhere, it's just leave the space. Leave the space for the other person. Or and just quite simply, if you're ahead, be entitled to the corner. That's all. And if you're side by side, just leave space. And then you can't be going to the technicalities of, oh, my axle was ahead, or my front end wing plate was ahead, or whatever it might be. If you're side by side, broadly, leave space. This to me was, I mean, more than just unfair, more than just uh, very reactionary and very aggressive. It's dangerous. And that's what I'm most annoyed by. I don't want my Formula One world champion to be dangerous. And it's not like I'm voting for a world champion, but that's the person who represents the sport ultimately and
I,
is a beacon of light and hope for future drivers. Is this the precedent you want to set for future drivers? I'm talking like an auntie here, but sure. I mean, it's a
no,
valid point to bring up.
it's a very valid point, and I in fact, I'm going to expand on what you just said because why do we love Max Verstappen as a driver?
Hmm.
Because of him able to pull that special lap when he has to, him able to offer some really hard racing when he can. We remember
Mm.
2022, him and Leclerc going wheel to wheel. 2021, him and Max Verstappen going wheel to wheel. I'm not talking of incidents. I'm talking of when they do keep it between the white lines. I think it's beautiful. So
Mm.
what we actually tune in for when we tune in for Formula One is that level of racing. Okay, we do not tune in for dangerous driving. Okay, because you're right, this is absolutely dangerous. Lando Norris, despite being friends with Max Verstappen, actually called it out on the radio as well that it's dangerous driving. So, having said that, I really hope that given how things are going, we'd love to get to see a Leclerc versus Max because I think the one driver who Max really respects and is a little more wary of is Charles Leclerc, given their history from karting, the incident days that we know of. But yeah, it just goes to show that Max is in that space where, and we've seen two different kind of Maxes when it comes to battle. If he has got a car which is almost there, thereabouts, he really battles hard. Okay. But if he's got a car which is genuinely got a pace deficit, he's like, by all means, please drive by.
Mm.
And post race, he said, "I'm not worried about the penalties. I'm actually more worried about the fact that we've not got a quick car." So they're also trying to change the narrative when it comes to all the penalties and so on. So it's just what it is, and I don't think it's going to change unless those driving guidelines change, Samuel.
Yeah, and Lando could have won this race. At the end, the gap between himself and Carlos Sainz was just 4 seconds. But remember that Lando also had to get past a couple of cars for a very, I mean, he was stuck behind a couple of cars for a very long time. And 4 seconds is an easy amount of time to gain in clean air. And Lando reduced that deficit from, I think, 8.5, 9 seconds to 4 seconds at the end. So he was quick. Clearly, there was space in that car.
Yeah, there was, and I also get a feeling, Carlos Sainz was holding on. He was saving his tires. He was saving for a pounce if he needed to. So he was in, like I said, he was unmatched. So he was driving to the pace of his car and protecting it rather than driving to the pace of a rival as a response to something else. But yeah, that's just where it goes. And 4 races to go only, and I really wish Mercedes gets to the fight because they had some strange spins with both drivers.
Yeah.
George Russell was driving a car which was like 12 races old in terms of spec. Lewis Hamilton was like, there's just no balance that comes in the car, so it's just something that's off with Mercedes. But I think before we speak, we don't really have more to say about Mercedes, but we should we speak Haas? Is that where we're going, or where do
No,
you
no, I
think
have
we're going
something
next?
to say about Mercedes. I
Okay.
do. You mentioned about Esteban Ocon licking his lips about going to Haas. Think about Lewis Hamilton. Think about how good he must be feeling. That this is the car he's jumping into. And also, to bring back battling, that battle between him and George Russell that lasted for almost the entirety of the middle of the race, that is what we're tuning in for. That is good racing and fair play. Even though George is very aggressive, even though Lewis will push it to the absolute limit, they know where to respect the racing boundaries. And they kept it clean and they kept it wonderful. I was thoroughly entertained watching that. And great to see Lewis also gaining in confidence. But Mercedes just reminds me of this very weird post I saw last night slash morning at 5 o'clock, because the race ended so late. Obviously, Instagram doom scrolling kicks in. And I saw an interesting post, Kunal, which said, hard times breed tough monkeys breed work times breeds prosperity, breeds lazy monkeys, and lazy monkeys breed hard times, which means the whole cycle carries on. And Mercedes is in that cycle of the hard times, and that's only going to breed tougher monkeys, if you know what I mean. And if you remember that question that Nicky Lauda actually very famously was a part of, where he said that drivers need to be very trained and no monkey can ever get in the car and ever do it. Kind of makes sense, right?
Kind of makes sense.
I'm trying
And
to make it make sense at least.
yeah, on to I think we should probably go back to the hero of the race weekend. There were two heroes. First was Pato O'Ward, who drove in FP1, And then oh yeah, the fallen hero. And
Yeah, it's a
you
very
know,
Batman way to put it, no?
yeah, the Red Bull must be wondering. They all four drivers that are contracted to them had a bad race weekend. Sonoda exited the first corner itself. Liam Lawson raced extremely hard. That Helmut Marko, who usually loves hard racing, as we know, had to say, "Ah, you were battling a sister team, and maybe you didn't need to race that hard." He sort of
Ah,
ruined a part of Checo Perez's race, but
is that a sign of respect from Helmut Marko? Like,
maybe,
I doff your cap to for racing so good. You're racing so well that you don't need to race so well. I think he's earned his respect now. I
yeah.
get why.
And Liam Lawson in this short span of time, last race had a spat with Fernando Alonso. This race a spat with Checo Perez and Red Bull. I remember there was this another battle that Lando and Max were going on to, and they just decided to pit Max because they realized we cannot risk more time penalties. Let's just bring Max in. But Checo Perez, I mean, he had a great start. Just that he was out of his start box. So yes, he made an error of judgment, sitting low, missed his start grid box as he would. But when he made the start, he pulled off what 5 overtakes on the course of that opening lap. So
Yeah.
it just goes to show he keeps insisting this is not his final Formula One race at home, etc. But I just don't know what and why will Red Bull continue with him unless there is such a strong financial clause at exit that it'll cost Red Bull a lot more money than all the face that they've lost with. I mean, can you imagine? Ferrari has overtaken Red Bull for P2 in the
Yeah.
Constructors Championship. And this is for a Red Bull who normally just like, there we go, we're getting rid of a driver. They've done that with Daniel. I wonder what those contract clauses are like for them to not be so trigger happy with Checo Perez.
Yeah. And this was that moment, him rolling ahead of his pit box. It seemed like the emotions were getting to him, Kunal. I know I might be sounding a bit critical, but when Red Bull came on the radio to inform him of his false start, his response was no, it was a great start, which sounds like a lot of emotion at play. Sounds, not saying denial, but it sounds like you're so in tune and engrossed with just how good you've done something that you forget that you've actually made a slip up. And there is
But
no acceptance of that slip up initially, which all points towards why is there so much emotion? Why is there so much furor? Why is there so much aggression that he's able to get 5 positions in one lap, which is incredible, by the way. It all points towards emotions flowing highly, which all points towards A, home race, B, last ever home race, potentially. That's what I read it towards as. I may be wrong, but
so I'll be honest. I think if I react non-emotionally to this start, it was a great start
yeah,
because it's another thing. He's out of his grid box. He's not like he's probably 20, 30 centimeters out, which of course is a big transgression. You're even 1 centimeter out, you're out of transgression. But that shouldn't take away from the fact that he actually pulled off those overtakes. So it's not that he just drove past people because he started earlier. He
yeah.
started correctly, just out of position, and he made the most of his experience, his passion, the local crowd cheering him to pull off those overtakes. So of course he probably just like you're saying had an oversight where you can see he's out of his grid box by a large margin out there. The yellow line on the bottom left, for those who are seeing the video, is where his line should be. As you can see, Oscar Piastri as well, at the line. But Checo was just way ahead. But either way,
Yeah, and then Liam Lawson didn't spare him at all. This was good to see. Uh, I felt that battle was a little more personal, given the circumstances, given the fact that Liam could be replacing Sergio. But a word on Liam Lawson very quickly. He reminds me of a very Helmut Marko driver. He's very aggressive. He's very on the limit. I've not seen him push it beyond it yet. Maybe that battle with Franco Colapinto was slightly on the edge, where both of them made contact and it compromised both of their races marginally. It's not like they were going to end up scoring points that clearly. But there's a very Mark Webber sense to it, Kunal. Very gritty in terms of his battling, and I hadn't seen much of him. I'll be honest, but I like what I see. He's a Red Bull. driver, if you know what I mean.
Yes, I think Liam is also realizing that he needs to stake his claim in the sport, etc. And I would say he drove fairly well to establish himself in Austin, scored points out here as well. The team has been very happy with him with what he was trying to do. They tried to get the fastest lap from, didn't he get the fastest lap of the race? So they did what they did with Daniel in Singapore, where Liam Lawson was made to pit to get the fastest lap. I think even Leclerc went for it and Perez went for it, and ultimately, I can't remember who got the fastest lap of the race.
It was Leclerc at the end. That was a mini battle that they had.
Correct.
So
Yes.
Ferrari versus McLaren. No, Ferrari versus Red Bull. Yeah, at the end.
Absolutely. So that's, I would say Liam is showing great. It doesn't seem like he's been out of Formula One. That's the beauty, he's come in and he's driving like he's been driving the previous 18 races, not just the last two of them.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Okay, what do we talk about next? I think we need to talk about. Well, rather, we should just hop and skip through a few points to show you the things that you might have missed throughout this race weekend. There was a finger, Kunal, and yeah, I've heard fingers are big in Mexico City because Sebastian Vettel once showed it here at this very place. Liam Lawson has now joined that esteemed list. Vettel showed his finger to Verstappen. Lawson is showing his finger to Perez. Oh,
No,
is
not
the finger
Lawson.
like a handing of the torch kind of thing with Red Bull now? All four of them are Red Bull drivers, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, I would say it's just no love lost, as you put it in the previous slide, because
Yep.
Liam knows these are those moments that could make or break what he's going to get to do in Red Bull. Nobody wants to race for V Carb or Racing Bulls or Alpha Tauri or Toro Rosso. They all want to race for Red Bull Racing, and they're going to do what it takes to get there.
Yep. That was that. There was also a couple of really interesting moments. Yeah, I think we should now that Sundaram isn't here, I think we can go to Fernando, right? Because we didn't want to pain him as much while while he was around, because this is a slightly depressing image. Uh, as I said earlier, Kunal, before we recorded, I think it kind of sums up this stage of Fernando Alonso's career. 400th Grand Prix, an achievement that nobody has done in Formula One. How do we mark it? With a retirement. That sounds like a lot like Fernando Alonso post 2014, if you ask me. Last 10 years summed up in a way.
Yeah, and I think, like Sundaram said, I think it was 200th race was retirement, 300th race retirement, 400th race also a retirement. This retirement was down to something being stuck in the front cooling, which is why they couldn't get rid of it, and then they just decided to retire that car, which is a bit of a bummer for a man who spent almost half his life racing in Formula One. I think that to me is the most incredible stat. In fact, he has raced against a driver who raced in the 80s. That is Jean Alesi. So that's the
When?
width. 1989 was Alesi's debut, but in 2001, Jean Alesi was racing when Fernando Alonso made his debut as well. He's raced against
What?
118 drivers or something. So Fernando is Fernando Alonso. Yeah, I'd love to see what he can do with an Adrian Newey car.
That's insane. That's
Much,
insane.
yeah, much like I'd love to see what Ferrari and Leclerc can do in Brazil. Leclerc would want to bounce back because Leclerc was pissed after the race. Several moments of how Carlos tried to go up and talk to him, and then, of course, in that moment, just after the race, you don't really gauge it. But Leclerc was pissed because he had no answer to Carlos Sainz this race weekend, and he knew he had the faster car or the fastest car in qualifying, but he couldn't nail it. And like I said at the start, circuits, car packages, and even driver preferences when it comes to how they can go quicker
Yeah.
were at play in Mexico, and I think it was a beautiful race.
And one at the end where we got to see a phenomenal image. Not this one. This wasn't a phenomenal image. These were those phenomenal images. Carlos Sainz photobombing McLaren's party. And then Zach Brown coming to photobomb the Ferrari party. I I like this. I mean, some people will scoff at this and say, "Oh, they're not competing hard enough. This is not what Formula One is all about." But you can have a bit of fun in the middle, right? And it's good to see them competing so hard, taking each other to the absolute limit, but then having fun as competitors. I love this new wave of team principals. Zach Brown, Fred Vasseur, the way they just have fun with each other now. Yeah, this is lovely to see.
This is beautiful. I mean, Carlos thrived under Zach's leadership at McLaren before he joined Ferrari, and then Carlos and Lando, of course, great friendship. So Carlos went and paid back the favor with a photo bomb. We love these moments as they come and go. And the one moment from Mexico, which we should just before we end, I spoke about Pato Award driving, and he was just 3/10 off Oscar Piastri, which I think was fantastic performance. But he actually one thing I hate about Formula E and IndyCar and every other series is
Hmm.
that they immediately just compare themselves to Formula One and Formula One teams and drivers. Okay, Pato O'Ward said, "Oh, if you put a Formula One driver in an IndyCar, they'll be 1.5 seconds off the pace, not 3/10 off." And I just realized that, dude, you're getting a chance in Formula One, which is a big deal.
Yeah.
Okay, but is there a Formula One driver actually waiting for a chance in IndyCar? No, absolutely not. Okay, so why get into this? We are better than you, just that. I mean, if you're better than us, if put it that way, considering you and I are like the Formula One guys, is this the best way? IndyCar does have better racing. MotoGP does have better racing. But
Yeah.
is the product overall the best? No, absolutely not. Okay, Formula One has embraced different facets of motorsport, made it more mainstream. And I just wish that teams, drivers, whoever is competing in IndyCar, please absolutely enjoy yourselves, entertain all of us. We'll keep cheering you guys, but don't just always the first thing you can do is make a comparison to try and put Formula One down, because that just shows that you have a long way to go if the only way to grow up in the ranks of motorsport is by pulling Formula One down at every possible instance you can. Great lap by Pato Award, but I promise you, if you put a Max Verstappen in the Indy car, he's probably going to break a lap record in his first hour or something, or a Lewis Hamilton, or a Leclerc, or a Lando Norris, or whoever.
You can't tell how good these guys are. It's only when you see those more nuanced moments, like what we saw with Carlos Sainz this time, managing the gaps constantly, being so good in qualifying. That's when you know just how good they are and what level they're operating on. And also, very quickly, when Leclerc saved the car on the final corner, that tells you how good he is. Nobody else. I mean, it takes a lot to save a car from a snap like that at the final corner when you're going full throttle. That is how good of a driver Leclerc is, and that's how good the Formula One drivers are. But we'll get to see them in action in Brazil next time out. And for that episode, we would love to have your questions, guys. Send in all of your questions, thoughts, and any sort of predictions on the Inside Line F1 podcast's social media pages. We'll be back for the Brazil GP preview, and I know that you will be too. If you're watching us on YouTube, these are our handles at Inside Line F1 Pod. See you guys. Thank you very much. Bye bye.